All right, what's going on, guys? Phil Daru back again with another video. Today I have a special treat with me, Trevor Jaffe. I've had the pleasure of knowing this individual for quite some time. He has 25 years in the game, super strong athlete, and just a phenomenal coach in general. Trevor, go ahead and give him kind of like a background on how you started in this field and industry, and give him some of your greatest accomplishments.
Yeah, man. Like you said, 25 years lifting. I've been competing in strength sports for 14 years now. Varied from strongman to Olympic weightlifting to powerlifting primarily now. I coach several all-time world record athletes across all federations for powerlifting, including Stacy Burr, who was the all-time highest ever Wilks. Dallas Norris was the all-time squat. Jen Rotzinger, who's just the queen at 114, both wraps and sleeves. It's just broken every record known to man, the greatest lightweight lifter out there. Myself, some of my best lifts were 700 squat and 800 deadlift. Actually, I'm literally 3 weeks out from a torn adductor and torn sartorius from being in here about a week and a half before my last meet. I tore my adductor on a 705 squat. So we're actually gonna go over some cool stuff with some of the rehab I've been doing, because even though I'm literally, 23 days out, I can do this.
Yeah.
And if you saw my leg a couple days ago, it was black and blue all the way down. You'll still see some residual black and blue marks here, but it went from groin, literally half the groin, to my ankle was black.
Yeah. So that was the thing that I wanted to talk about on this video, was how to actually recover from these crazy injuries. And no better to actually tell us this than a guy that actually just went through it. So I've actually seen him just recover and get better and obviously improve through days on end. It wasn't even just like he came in here and did a couple of things. He was diligent with what he was trying to accomplish, was to get better and get back underneath the bar. So Trevor, let's go over some things that you've done to get back to 100%.
Yeah, the first thing is identifying what's the issue. Injuries are gonna happen when you're testing your limits. That's just bound to happen. Fatigue builds up and your body eventually gives out. And that's the point of our periodized programming. When you're doing that, is to try and minimize fatigue as much as possible and know when to tail back. And I went literally one rep too far over that and the snap. So, identifying what's the issue. And that you probably need to see a clinician for, a doctor, identifying what the injury is, all right? Then you create an action plan, and you have to take massive, massive action. People talk about it. My doctor told me to rest, and I'm like, yes, you don't want to push your limits, but you can do more than rest. So identifying my issues. My issue was a tremendous amount of swelling. From knee and down was out to here. So I couldn't really move my leg. So priority one was minimizing the swelling. The swelling is there for a reason, so I don't want to force it out. Like, I didn't want to ice my leg all day, every day, and get rid of the neutrophils that are helping there to heal, but I needed my leg to drain. So the first thing I did was shout out to Tony Rogers, because he helped me out with this. I had 2 drills I had to do. First thing to do was my leg, it needed to go up, right? Obviously. So we talk about this a lot, of creating stability and trying to avoid compensation patterns. When you've hurt something, your body will try and compensate by activating other muscle groups, which can lead to poor pattern support programming. So I wanted to activate the opposing muscle group so I can get some contraction in the area without irritating the injured muscle. So since my adductor magnus and sartorius were damaged, I was using my hamstrings and my glutes, and I would bridge up slightly, contract for 10 seconds, and breathe deep. And I would hold that for 10 seconds, and as I would release the air and sink down, it would relax. So I'm getting some contraction within the leg, but not contracting the injured area, right? That was step one, because that was about as far as I could bend my leg. So I needed to get that fluid out of there. Step 2 was elevating the leg even higher. And I'm actually gonna come to the wall that's in here if you'll work with me here. This was the one that Tony really wanted me to do, was to get on the wall. And I actually had to start back here because I couldn't get my leg close enough, but as I got closer to it, starting like clock hands and doing the same thing I did there, contracting the glute and the hamstring for 10 seconds, holding, and then I would wait my 10 seconds, and as I would let my air out, I would let the foot drop. So I would come down like a clock hand to here, and where I felt the most restriction. Right? Because our body is guarding itself neurologically, that's where it felt the most restriction. So then I would do it again. From here, I would contract, hold for my 10 seconds. I'm gonna do a little bit short now, but I'd let go, and let it drop again. So as I'm breathing and contracting muscles around it, I'm letting my nervous system know that it's not gonna receive further damage. It's allowing the muscle to move back. So now I'm gaining the range of motion back in that injured area.
So you're saying you're giving it a sensory input primarily?
I'm giving it a sensory input through contraction on the opposite side, what's called reciprocal inhibition. So all the muscles around it had tightened to support it, so I was now contracting and relaxing them to, 1, get the fluid out, and 2, let my system know it's okay. It's not under any dangerous load anymore, it's under no threat. Let's get that range of motion back to a point where I can now get to here. And then once I got the leg all the way down, and do it again, then I can work on getting both sides out. So I've worked on the single side that was hurt first, and then I progressed to my contraction, and my relaxation, and then do it from here. And keep going all the way out. So I can get back to my sumo pattern, which is how I prefer to deadlift. Or if you squat wide, or even if you're a grappler, you're going to be in this position very often playing guard. So, and then groin injuries are pretty common. From there, progressing to this position of working myself down, and that same thing I did there, but contracting the glutes and hamstrings to come up. Now these were just pulses. My leg is still elevated, I'm pulsing, and that contraction and pulsing is helping to push that fluid out. So that was step one. Eliminate the swelling, get the range of motion back, and light level load to contract and activate those muscles so they don't get stiff or rigid. Step two, after I was working on the draining for the full week, was I was starting to get some range of motion back. I could start picking my leg up and doing things. So step two was active range of motion. Why that's important? Because if you passively move your leg, your body doesn't learn that. So we were talking about this off camera. If you do functional range conditioning in cars, it's great to keep the joint loose, but your body doesn't learn that range of motion under load. That's the most important. We need to be able to stabilize and move under load. So I literally started with a very high box squat. So I would start here, and I had to actually go a little bit wider. I was hinging back, and this was my first active loaded range of motion, which is coming to and from here. Right? I couldn't go full range yet. The hip wouldn't allow me to, and the knee wouldn't allow me to. There was still some swelling, but I actively started with load on here. So that was starting to learn my hip hinge pattern and to stabilize my pelvis, and I took them very slow. I tempoed them super slow so my body can really learn. I made sure I stayed still in the box and squeezed my glutes and hamstrings to come up, not so much my quad and adductors. That was stage one, right? So once stage one didn't hurt, I kept going to lower and lower box until I got to just about parallel. I added a few more steps. Through that principle we talked about before of reciprocal inhibition, I began to use the wall because I really need to focus on pelvic stability. So I started doing contrast RDLs, where I was actively pushing back against the wall with my glute and hamstring, so that kept this side stable while I focused on hip hinging here. And I would do both sides even though I couldn't go the same range of motion, but I would work on this side, and now that range of motion is the same as far as the hip extension is concerned. And I progressed that to that same contralateral, pressing against the wall, going to a posterior tilt, which gave me some active stretching of the hip flexor because I was contracting the glute, that's reciprocal inhibition. Taking a big brace, which intra-abdominal pressure for us, we just call it bracing. So we fill the whole torso, that creates our stability, and rotating down so I can really focus on pelvic stability and back up.
So that's important. When you're talking about proximal stability, will lead to distal mobility. So he's able to produce that overall range of motion because he's tight in his core. Right?
Yeah, that's a huge Stu McGill saying. Proximal stability is distal ability. So if you want your appendages to move very well, create the stability in the midline first. So stability is the mother of strength. So without stability, you can't move.
And it's a good way to lift the amount of weight that he lifts.
Yeah, you're not going to move a lot of weight if you can't stabilize it. You're only as strong as what you can stabilize.
Cool.
So that was my second step, was to actively load it through ranges of motion. Step three, and this is actually my first week there, actually did this just to make sure I could off camera first. I'm going to load it. So I went through actively loading through just my body weight to make sure the range of motion was there and stable. So literally on Monday was the first time I squatted with any load. I did the high box squat still with load. And my goal for this week was to take the loaded barbell to a full range of motion without any assist. So coming through, stepping back, I'm taking my normal squat stance. And as we talked about so far in all the steps, getting that brace or intra-abdominal pressure to create stability. And while it's not perfect yet, and I'm not exploding, I'm controlling the range, literally 3 weeks after a horrendous tear, I have full range of motion back, or almost full range of motion.
This is impressive. If you guys don't understand, like, this isn't really common. Like, you can't do this 3 weeks out from an adductor tear. And if you did see it, his leg was entirely black and blue.
Black.
Like, it was, you couldn't really even notice it, to be honest with you.
It looked necrotic, but it's intentional work.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's extraordinary, but that's what, when you go all in and you take massive action, this has been daily work. So the daily rehab has been draining. I've used an E-stem unit with my leg elevated so it will contract for me to keep pushing the fluid out, and I never pushed beyond a pain threshold. So if something was uncomfortable, I lived with it. If something was painful, I didn't do it yet. I progressed through steps each day, intentional work every day, not to fatigue it, but just to work it.
All right, guys, so as you can see, the step process, it's not an easy process. It's a grueling effort. Obviously you have to train it just like anything. But Trevor, go through those processes again and let them know how they can go about doing it to get them back to 100%.
Yeah, the first step was identifying the issue. Having someone help me identify where the injury was and then creating an action plan. right? So once I had my action plan, it was no longer wallowing, why me, why me? I got rid of the victim mindset, and it's okay, how do I achieve from this?
Yep.
What do I have to grow from this? What do I have to learn from this? And how can I help others from this? So I created my action plan was, draining and getting range of motion back passively. I didn't actively load it yet because it was still injured. I worked with reciprocal inhibition to contract muscle of the leg on the opposite side, which helped me flush the fluid out, get my range back. Once I had significant range back, I started with partial range of motion and tempos with just my body weight as active load. And once that was safe, we progressed to the bar through full range of motion. And I'm not rushing the loading process. Literally, my goal for this week is just going to be squatting the bar for the full range of motion. I'm not going to add load till next week. And my fourth step is to be explosive on it. So once I've got the bar down with a little bit of load, then I feel safe. I'll start with very low level jumps. So once I feel like I can jump, then I know I can explode under weight again.
Nice, yeah.
So it's literally just a tier system.
Yep.
It's you're going from white belt to blue belt to purple belt. Same thing. Although I did it a little bit faster, but it's diligent work. Creating a tier system. I identified the problem, created an action plan, took massive action every single day to heal it, and slowly progressed each step along the way, never jumping from step 2 to 4. I went to step 3 first.
Okay, so proving in range of motion, right? Actively loading, and then putting external load, and then plyometrics.
Yep. Nice. Plyometrics will be the last step. Then I know I can fully explode on it when I can jump and land and stabilize.
Perfect. Now this can go not just with adductors, but anything, right? You tear a muscle. This is the process that you want to go about doing to get you back to where you want to be, whether it be on the mats, in the cage, on the gym floor, whatever have you. Make sure that you do it. Trevor, thanks again, bro.
Yeah, dude.
Appreciate
Rest
it.
is a misnomer, right? You want to rest the injured area, but if you contract the opposite, you can help it heal.
That's it. And it's pretty hard to get us to rest anyway. So at the end of the day, just keep on working. And it's not the end of the world. Just get better. Make sure that you can prevent this from happening again. Learn from your mistakes and go on from there. All right, guys. Thanks again for watching. If you have any questions, you know what to do. Hit the comments down below. I'm going to put Trevor's Instagram handle down in the description, so make sure you give him a follow, and also make sure you subscribe, hit the notifications so you know when my videos come out. See you again next time. Peace.